Welcome to the 68th episode of our Crossing Thin Ice podcast series, where twice a month we tackle risk management topics. Our aim for these podcasts is to help with your ERM program and general risk knowledge. We encourage you to share with anyone interested in lifelong learning about risk management, and we welcome your feedback. You can also find Crossing Thin Ice in your Substack feed. My name is Max Rudolph, and as always, I'm joined by Dave Ingram. Today, Dave is going to share his thoughts on business success. This is the second in a series of 3 discussions, with this one focused on how good timing can be integrated into your risk management process to make better choices. As a reminder, nothing in today's podcast is intended to be investment advice. We are here to provide educational material on risk topics without getting lost in the weeds.
Mastering good timing can provide a profound business advantage. I was a swimmer, and I always thought of timing as getting off the starting block at the right time. So I needed to be ready when the starting judge fired the gun to start the race. Those 2 aspects of timing apply to business as well. You need to be ready while the rest of the world is ready to start the race. Just look at any swim race. The swimmer who has the right timing often starts out half a body length ahead. In the insurance business, if you're thinking about a new product, then the product needs to be ready. The admin systems need to be ready. The forms need to be approved, and the people in the company need to be ready to sell the new product. But all your readiness does not help much at all if the buyers are not ready to buy. If you want to sell a product that is tied closely to stock market performance, for instance, you want to take that product to market in the early middle of a booming stock market. During a market crash or in the middle of a choppy market just will not do. The product is likely to get lost. The inside readiness can be divided into several important elements. Organizational alignment. The people in the business from the top to the bottom need to be ready for the new product. They must be ready, willing, and able to make whatever changes in their normal routines that are demanded by the new product. Product readiness. The product needs to be completely thought through. This is more than policy forms and admin procedures. This is a top-to-bottom detailed idea of the story of what problems that the product solves for who and how it does that. Operational readiness. Those policy forms and admin procedures do need to be in place as well. Financial readiness. The company needs to know where the funds will come from to pay the startup and acquisition expenses, as well as the setting up of the capital for the risks that are added by the new product. And sales team readiness. The entire sales process also needs to be ready. They need to be able to support the sales agents providing the story of the product, along with the sales materials and a smooth issue process. On the other side of this is that outside readiness, and that can be divided up in a similar way. First, there's economic timing. Most new products would do best if they were launched during boom times, and worst if they're launched during a bust. That part seems simple, but knowing what to do the rest of the time is where the advantage comes. Moderate times are not actually flat. They have ups and downs that could make or break a product launch. Technology timing. We face a constant challenge, deciding when to invest in emerging technologies and when to let go of fading ones. Success depends on anticipating where technology is heading and moving with it, not clinging to past strengths. Regulatory timing. The wave of financial deregulation in the late 1990s was reversed after the global financial crisis. The successful products were tailored to the prevailing winds. Cyclical timing. Some products enjoy seasonal or other patterns in their sales. You might want to launch during a lull to work out the kinks in your product, but often it is better to work out those kinks in test mode and launch when the fish are biting. Customer readiness. Sometimes products are ahead of their markets. Best to know that before rollout. And competitive timing. In some cases, it's best to be the first mover with a new product idea, but often the second or third company in a new product line will win the business by perfecting the product in ways that the first mover was not even aware were flaws. How does risk management help a company to get this right? Surprisingly, there are quite a few ways that risk management helps with this. First, there's environmental monitoring. An important ERM function gives you the information about the economic, technology, and regulatory state of the market. Then there's promotion of transparency so that information about the internal and external readiness can be provided by any and all staff. This helps risk management by making it likely that internal audiences will pay attention to what is happening in a product area. But it has the side benefit that people build trust, that management values the truth and will not shoot the messenger. Helping to set internal standards for operations. This is a basic part of operational risk management. And a comprehensive review of new products and other major endeavors to assure that risk assessment is appropriate and expected returns for the risk taken are appropriate and that the resulting risk profile of the company is acceptable and that reinsurance is in place if it is likely to be needed. These can all be seen as signs of internal readiness. Stress testing and scenario planning. Studying the rollout under different conditions with scenarios allows management to gain an opinion of what readiness looks like in different situations. It is important when there is a long lead time and the situation at rollout might be different from the current environment. This process widens the field of acceptable rollout environments and clarifies when not to proceed as well. And risk limits and plans for limit breaches is another important thing. Timing does not only apply to launch, you also need to get the timing right for reactions to unplanned issues. Early warning indicators such as KRIs will help get the timing right for launch and for later management decisions. And finally, there's adaptability. The best risk management programs cultivate agility and adaptability as a core skill to enable the company to address the current risks rather than the risks of last year or even last decade's risks. This same skill comes in handy to enhance timing for a new product. The firm that is agile can advance or postpone rollout dates as new information is gathered from your entire transparent organization that wants to tell you now or wait. Timing is important to risk management and serves as a transferable strength in all business activities, especially new endeavors.
So, Dave, this is the second in this series of 3 that you've written with the focus on good timing and risk management in this one. Can you share some examples that you've seen from your past work on this topic?
Sure, Max. I'm going to draw some of these examples from my experience with variable annuities and variable annuity hedging, and particularly the run-up to the financial crisis, when a lot of the guarantees in the variable annuities came heavily into the money. And a lot of companies, even those with hedging programs, experienced problems. Let me start out with an unusual, what was in my experience a very unusual story of timing. One of the things I did with variable annuity hedging was I helped install hedging programs at several companies, and just one of those companies took the what became known to me as an unusual step of they wanted to be able to start their hedging program from day one of their variable annuity program. They were late entrants into the variable annuity market. They felt that, unlike every other company that I worked with, who felt that, oh yeah, well, you can't buy these hedge contracts, for $100 or $1,000. You buy them in the millions. If you're just starting up a new business line, you probably can't buy a hedge contract the first week that makes sense for the size of your business, or the second week, and it may be 2 or 3 months before you've actually done enough business to require hedging. But this one company decided that they needed to have been doing hedging and making the transactions and be fully capable of doing it. So the very first day that they had enough business to warrant hedging, they knew what to do and they could execute on it. So that was a timing decision on their part, that they did not want there to be any periods of time they were not covered by the hedging program that they wanted to have. Example of timing, and I used this example in another recent podcast, was a company that stepped out of the arms race of variable annuity writers. This was a company that was a top writer, just decided in 2007 to stop trying to match the leading companies in the business with what they offered as features in the product. They felt that it was too difficult to hedge, too expensive to hedge, and that it was too likely for there to be a problem with that last round of guarantees. So they stepped away from that. They did a lot less business that year and a lot less business at the very peak of the market. So their good timing worked out well for them. An example of bad timing with variable annuities, just mentioned, is companies whose timing of how often they did the hedging was bad. In a relatively calm market, it probably made sense for companies to look at their hedging weekly, monthly, even because the market didn't move that much in any one week, any one month. And so their hedge position needs didn't necessarily change when they check them, if they check them more frequently. So they stopped even checking them. But then when the market did get frothy, the need to rebalance was showing up several times a day, actually, because of the kind of hedge contracts that they were buying, and the way they were running their model was only covering them for a part of a day's worth of market movement. So their timing on their actually execution of their hedge program turned out to be bad. Another really bad timing story showed up in the long-term care business. That was a business that started up in the early 90s, I think. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, the business was starting to get to a point where many people were realizing that the business had been mispriced, that there were a lot of things that were happening, but there were a couple companies that had the bad timing to come into the business at that time. So as companies that had been writing the business for 10 years started to drop out, started to discontinue, started to change their coverages so they were much less competitive, these new companies came in and were able to write lots of business just before the losses starting to get really severe. And the losses in that business, as you may or may not know, came from the fact that people just didn't seem to realize that having insurance for something like long-term care, that there was a lot of voluntariness, a lot of optionality on the part of the insured, whether or not they would go into a long-term care facility. And they just didn't seem to realize that people with insurance would use that benefit, and that the utilization was much higher in actual practice of people with long-term care insurance than the utilization of people without. And in fact, the longevity of the people that went into long-term care with the different utilization turned out to be a lot longer than the statistics that they had based their product pricing on. The timing of coming into that business when the people that had been writing it were learning that it was a bad deal was really bad for the people that did that.
Yeah, the long-term care product continues to evolve, and like you're talking about the behavioral aspects of it, the willingness to put grandma into a facility. Generation 20 years ago was very willing to do that. And then going through COVID, I think people are a lot less likely to do that, much more likely to want to keep people at home. But there were several assumptions going into 2008 in particular from the long-term care product that caused problems. Like you mentioned, the people were living longer, people were more likely to be in the home for longer periods of time. But you also had interest rates falling. A lot of these products were priced when interest rates were up in the 10%, 8% range. And as they fell down, even just a 6 or 5%, that's over a lot of years. And so that became just an extra hammer on this product. I know I talked to some product actuaries at one point about whether it would make sense to make this a participating product and put some lowball assumptions in there, and they don't play out in the negative way that you give that back to the policyholder. They just couldn't compete in the marketplace with the results of those assumptions. So, yeah, it's an interesting product. I like the way that it's moving forward and being combined with, like a life product or an annuity product where it kind of offsets some of those risks to make it more viable, I think, going forward. But Yeah, it certainly was one that there were people coming in at the last minute and they paid the price for that.
Yeah, I remember in the 1990s, I was involved in a annuity line of business, and the only thing we did with that at that time was offer a long-term care rider that the main thing it was doing was waiving surrender charges if you went into a long-term care facility.
Yeah,
And
now they're much more integrated
yeah,
than that. So it'll be interesting to watch this product and variable annuities, as you were talking about, see how these products evolve as we go through the bottom part of the cycle and come out of it and see going forward. And mortgage covenants or bond covenants after 2008, everything changed, but it only took a year or two before they started going back to the really lackadaisical covenant practices. So it's kind of how sticky are some of those changes. Well, thanks, Dave. That's an interesting discussion on timing of with risk management, and we'll be back next time to talk about execution. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Crossing Thin Ice about using good timing with risk management. A practitioner can ensure success of a new product launch by making sure things like the organization, product, external environment, and customer are all ready for it. If you found it valuable, please like, subscribe, and share with your colleagues.